Ian Anderson, The Secret Language of Birds. From silence to birdsong, this is Ian Anderson's dawn chorus for a new century. A painter's album, a traveller's diary, and a composer's meditation. This is not simply a collection of songs. It is a private language spoken through melody, memory, and observation. We walk into light-embraced electronics, and Divinities explored orchestral restraint. The secret language of birds returns to organic textures. Acoustic guitar, flute, bouzouki, mandolin, and subtle percussion replace grandeur with intimacy. Released in 2000, this was Anderson's third solo album and perhaps his most personal. Inspired by landscapes, painters, travel experiences, fleeting observations, and emotional snapshots, it feels less like a conventional song cycle and more like a gallery of musical sketches. The title itself suggests communication beyond words. Birdsong becomes metaphor. Brief calls, fragments of feeling, coded messages understood more through instinct than explanation. Origins and intent. Released in March 2000, The Secret Language of Birds marked a clear shift in Anderson's solo identity. Unlike the electronic leanings of Walk Into Light or the orchestral elegance of Divinities, this album leans heavily into acoustic instrumentation and understated arrangements. Guitar, flute, bouzouki, mandolin, and light percussion dominate the soundscape. Anderson also supplied short-written notes about many of the songs in the album booklet. These reveal an unusually direct glimpse into his inspirations. Painters like Sir William Russell Flint and Alice Lowry, travel memories, political observations, culinary humor, environmental imagery, and moments of personal reflection. The album feels deliberately fragmented. Rather than constructing one continuous narrative, Anderson presents a short sequence of vignettes, short emotional or visual studies. Each song acts like a watercolour painting, compact, atmospheric, and suggestive rather than explicit. Birdsong becomes an ideal metaphor for this structure. Birds communicate in brief calls, each distinctive yet part of a wider chorus. Anderson mirrors this idea musically. Small pieces that feel independent, yet connected by mood, imagery, and recurring acoustic warmth. This painterly approach gives the album a reflective quality. These are not dramatic rock statements. They are observations, memories, and impressions preserved in music. Musical themes. The album's sonic palette is largely acoustic and understated. Anderson combines flute, acoustic guitar, bouzouki, mandolin, and occasional folk instrumentation with subtle keyboards and percussion. The arrangements are rarely dense. Instead, space and texture become part of the composition. The album also carries traces of travel, Celtic phrasing, Mediterranean textures, Latin rhythms, and hints of Indian influence appear throughout, not as direct imitations, but as impressions gathered from experience. Unlike many Jethro Tull albums, there is little theatrical aggression here. Instead, Anderson adopts the role of observer. The mood is often spring-like and reflective. The songs suggest movement through galleries, landscapes, memories, and passing encounters. This is music as sketchbook, intimate, literate, and quietly cinematic. Anderson has often said that he does not read traditional music notation. Much of his composition begins internally, shaped by instinct, memory, and emotion, while fellow musicians later translate those ideas into written form. That may help explain why this album feels less engineered than remembered. Music arriving first as feeling, then gradually becoming structure. Decoding the tracks. The Secret Language of Birds. The album opens with its central metaphor. Anderson's flute suggests dawn chorus, while acoustic instrumentation creates an atmosphere of renewal and calm. According to Anderson's own notes, the song reflects the Big Dawn chorus, and the possibility that a morning after a significant night may reveal someone special. The song therefore operates on two levels. It evokes literal birdsong, but also the uncertain excitement of human connection. Communication becomes instinctive rather than verbal. It is a fitting overture that's warm, pastoral, and quietly optimistic. The Little Flower Girl, one of the album's most painterly tracks, this piece was directly inspired by the work of watercolour artist Sir William Russell Flint. Anderson specifically references Flint's often idealized depictions of women and wonders whether one recurring model, possibly Cecilia Green, was a favorite muse. Musically, the song mirrors visual art. Delicate instrumentation and flowing melody create the sensation of brushstrokes rather than narrative progression. The track is less about telling a story than evoking the mood of standing before painting and imagining the life behind the image. Montserrat. This song carries one of the album's darker emotional undercurrents. Anderson's notes reference his visit to the Caribbean island of Montserrat between volcanic eruptions. He reflects on both natural destruction and the lingering sense of colonial abandonment. The lyrics suggest fragility and survival. References to ashfall and damaged landscapes give the piece a mournful quality. Unlike the gentler pastoral moments elsewhere on the album, Montserrat confronts impermanence. How quickly beauty, community, and certainty can disappear. Postcard Day. On the surface, this sounds light and cheerful. Anderson described it as holiday guilt, the uneasy feeling of enjoying oneself while recognizing distance from reality. The lyric resembles the polite language of postcards, "Wish you were here," mixed with an uncomfortable honesty that perhaps you are glad the recipient is not. Musically, the breezy arrangement reinforces the irony. The song sounds carefree while quietly questioning the sincerity of tourist happiness. The Water Carrier. This piece blends travel imagery with visual art. Anderson's notes reference drinking bottled water in Delhi while avoiding illness, alongside admiration for ceramic vessels depicted by the artists such as William Russell Flint and Walter Langley. The song contrasts old-world craftsmanship with modern practicality. Rather than romanticizing hardship, Anderson reflects on the changing relationship between necessity and beauty. A simple bottle of water becomes symbolic, practical, disposable, and yet strangely connected to historical imagery. The track feels observational rather than sentimental. Set Aside. This is one of the album's shortest and most enigmatic pieces. Anderson described it simply as pointless and undignified prevarication. The title suggests avoidance or postponement, setting aside thoughts, responsibilities, or emotional truths. Rather than developing a detailed narrative, the song functions almost like a passing thought captured in music. Brief and elusive, it reinforces the album's vignette structure. Its ambiguity may be deliberate. Some moments resist explanation and exist purely as emotional fragments. A Better Moon. Anderson described the song as built around sultry and subtropical images of a flower maker fantasy 5,000 miles from home. The song evokes distance, longing, and imagined escape. Unlike the grounded realism of some tracks, A Better Moon leans into romantic projection, a dreamlike vision shaped by travel, memory, and exotic atmosphere. The title itself suggests comparison, not to the moon above us, but an idealized version viewed through imagination. Musically, it carries warmth and softness, reinforcing the feeling of distant reverie. Sanctuary. One of the album's most emotionally direct songs. Anderson's booklet note refers to the last haven of zoo rejects and children wasted, describing it as a difficult song to write that made me cry. The song becomes a meditation on refuge and compassion. Its imagery suggests neglected animals and vulnerable children sharing a symbolic safe place, a sanctuary for those discarded or forgotten. The restrained arrangement gives the lyrics emotional space, making the song one of the album's strongest expressions of empathy. The Jasmine Corridor. This song carries a sense of farewell. Anderson described it as a nice place to say goodbye, filled with pleasant sensory imagery of smell, appearance, and atmosphere. The phrase "faces east" may suggest sunrise, optimism, or spiritual direction. The closing thought that nothing ever really ends gives the song a reflective tone. Rather than sadness, the track feels accepting. It presents departure not as final loss, but as transition. The Habanero Reel, one of the album's livelier and more playful moments. The song is built around the idea of capsaicin, the chemical responsible for the heat of chili peppers. Anderson links this to both culinary excitement and physical reaction, describing the endorphin rush. The song balances humor and energy. References to fiery peppers become both literal and metaphorical, suggesting stimulation, danger, and exhilaration. Its rhythmic movement provides contrast to the album's quieter passages. Circular breathing. Named after the flute technique that allows a player to sustain sound without interruption, this piece becomes a metaphor for continuity. Anderson's own description frames it as the deep breath that goes on forever, and an objective view from a height. He also references influences ranging from Pink Floyd's Learning to Fly to painter L.S. Lowry and Status Quo's Pictures of Matchstick Men. The song therefore becomes a collage of perspectives, musical, visual, and emotional. Circular breathing itself symbolizes persistence, movement without break, and continuity without conclusion. The Secret Language of Birds Part 2. This short reprise acts as a return to the album's central idea. Anderson's note simply reads, "Semantics set aside, you with me." The phrase suggests that the language itself may not be enough to explain meaning. Rather than resolving the album, this reprise revisits its metaphor. Communication remains mysterious, incomplete, and instinctive. It functions almost like a whispered reminder of the album's theme. Boris dancing, one of the album's more eccentric entries. Anderson describes "Dear fragile human bear Boris," dancing through multiple time signatures in Moscow's Red Square. The song carries political undertones, likely referencing post-Soviet uncertainty and shifting identity. Anderson layers humor into the imagery. References to nostalgic dances, the frug, the twist, the mashed potato create absurd contrast. The result is both comic and uneasy, a portrait of awkward survival and reinvention. Panama Freighter, a reflective travel piece shaped by distance and pragmatism. Anderson's note refers to the Lonely Planet Guide to Traveler's Romance and asks a simple transactional question. You take US dollars? This creates tension between romantic travel fantasy and practical reality. The song feels detached, drifting between idealism and cynicism. Rather than celebrating adventure, Anderson observes the compromises of travel, where beauty and commerce inevitably coexist. The Stormont Shuffle, one of the album's most politically pointed tracks. The title references Stormont, seat of government in Northern Ireland. Anderson's note mentions peace, love, misunderstanding, and decommissioning the viper's tongues, clearly reflecting the political tensions surrounding the Northern Irish peace process. The song appears to comment on negotiation, mistrust, and political theatre. The shuffle suggests movement without clear progress. a dance of compromise, rhetoric, and competing agendas. Unlike the album's pastoral themes, this track pulls the listener back into human conflict and political complexity. Reception. Critics generally praised the album's intimacy, imagery, and acoustic focus. Many reviewers highlighted its painterly quality and Anderson's ability to create atmosphere without relying on heavy arrangements. Although often overshadowed by Rupee's Dance, released 3 years later, The Secret Language of Birds has gradually gained recognition as one of Anderson's most consistent solo works. It reached the Billboard Heatseekers chart in the United States and remains appreciated by listeners who prefer Anderson's quieter, more reflective material. In closing, The Secret Language of Birds is less concerned with dramatic statements than with fleeting moments. This is not an album built around spectacle or rock intensity. It is built around observation. Paintings, islands, corridors, spices, politics, memories, and birdsong become fragments of a larger emotional map. Anderson does not explain everything. He leaves spaces between meanings. That may be the album's greatest strength. Birdsong is not translated, it is interpreted. And perhaps that is the secret language here. Not certainty, but suggestion. Not direct explanation, but atmosphere. Not answers, but quiet recognition. This album sits as a bridge in Anderson's solo catalogue. Divinities looked inward through instrumental restraint. The Secret Language of Birds reconnects with landscape, memory, and human observation. It is a dawn album, a collection of sketches made in passing, a private travel journal written in flute, acoustic strings, and carefully observed detail. And like birdsong at first light, its meaning is felt before it is fully understood.